Welcome to the ninth grade experience. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. As a teacher of freshmen and one of our freshman mentor committee faculty advisors, I spend a lot of my school day thinking about and helping students with the successful transition from middle school to the halls of Emmaus High School. The goal of this podcast is to give you the story of the ninth grade here at Emmaus High School through the people who live it daily, the students and staff. We will attempt to touch on the real issues and stories that ninth grade students face, ranging from academics to athletics, technical school, and just trying to find your way as one person in a community of approximately 2,700 students. We will also look to speak with some of the influential staff members who play a key part in a student's ninth grade year. It is the hope that future ninth grade students and their families can use the tips and insights provided here to begin making connections to their potential new school and learn more about the day-to-day lives of the students that they will one day become and realize from day one that ninth grade counts. You can learn more about this episode and all of the episodes of the ninth grade experience by following us on Twitter at EHSFMC or at Chris Stutchko, or following the hashtag EHS9counts, or our website, sites.google.com/eastpennsd.org/ninth grade experience. Before we jump into today's topic, let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at EPSD Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or on Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show. Before jumping into this episode, I'd like to take a second to thank everyone who has listened to and supported the show, as we've recently passed 1,000 total listens of our 21 episodes of the podcast. It's been amazing to tell so many stories of the great things happening with our ninth grade students here at Emmaus High School, and I look forward to sharing so many more stories and expanding the podcast in many different ways. In addition to Twitter, you can now follow us on Instagram at Ninth Grade Experience, Facebook at Ninth Grade Experience Podcast, and on a new YouTube channel, the Ninth Grade Experience, which we're going to try to post some videos and other features in the near future. So now let's move on to today's show. While March is usually a time reserved for college basketball madness, this year at Emmaus High School, the third month of the year will be devoted to an even crazier topic: what to do with your future. It may seem like just yesterday, or now 7 months ago, that this year's ninth grade class entered the halls of EHS. Yet in our rapidly changing and evolving world, it's never too early to think about skills and strategies that may help prepare you to be successful in your post-school outcomes. Led and coordinated by EHS School Counselors Mrs. Grimm, Mrs. Demchak, and Mr. McInerney, March will feature a focus on employability skills and how career readiness is something that is happening every day throughout your schedule without you even knowing it. In addition, there will be over 30 speakers from local businesses that can give you real-world advice into potential careers that textbooks just can't provide. So it's time to begin to see where your path will lead with Mrs. Grimm, Mrs. Demchak, and Mr. McInerney. All right, everyone, welcome to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. We have our first multiple-time full episode guest here with us with a new edition this time. So this week, we're going to be talking about Career Readiness Month for the month of March, and we have three of our school counselors with us today. Returning for their second go-around, we have Mrs. Demchak.
Hello.
And we have Mr. McInerney.
Good morning.
Who were in episode 4 of season 2. If you want to go back, hit the pause button, go back and listen to that one to learn a little bit about your ninth grade counselors. But then come back to this one now. And then we have Mrs. Grimm, who is spearheading the 9th grade Career Readiness Month. So she wanted to come in and give a little bit of background on what's going on. And then also we have our 9th grade counselors here to give a little bit of added information for people. So thanks a lot, everyone, for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so Mr. McInerney and Mrs. Demchak already had to answer this question back in the earlier episode, but Mrs. Grimm has not. So we start every episode with asking people that come on, what was your 9th grade experience like? So we always tell people you don't have to identify your year or your school because you don't have to let people know how old you are.
Okay.
But Mrs. Grimm, if you want to tell us a little bit about what your 9th grade experience was like, just to kind of get us started here.
Okay, well, I actually went to high school in the Poconos, and it was a small district, but it was still very different going from a middle school with 3 grades to a high school with 4 grades. My older sister at the time was a senior when I was a freshman, so it helped in that I was able to know a lot of older students, but at the same time, she wasn't always very kind to me, so it made the experience very interesting in that way, having an older sister who liked to bully a little bit. But it was definitely difficult to make that transition at first. I certainly felt more comfortable in the spring than I did in the fall. And I remember just having a lot of questions about how am I going to get through the next 4 years at that time.
And listening to that and thinking about what a lot of people in prior episodes have talked about, people that have had older siblings here have found it to be, differing, challenging transitions. Right. And then if I remember correctly, I think it was Mr. McInerney talked about in the previous episode about how it took him about till midway through that freshman year to kind of get his footing. So again, we've talked to a lot of people that have kind of talked about what their freshman years were like and kind of shared very similar stories to that. Yep. So as we kind of move from that, now we're kind of looking at like career readiness. So it's really interesting. We sit in a lot of meetings, all of us here, and everyone is laughing and nodding. But we sit in a lot of meetings and we work with a lot of freshmen, and we're already thinking about what they're going to do after high school, and they literally have just gotten here. So we're moving into March, and March is going to be career month here at Emmaus High School. So whoever wants to kind of start, can you tell us a little bit about what that's going to look like for all the students at Emmaus, but especially like concerning 9th grade students?
Sure. So what we're really trying to do is make this a very encompassing month. We're not trying to make it different for different grade levels or anything like that, but we are really trying to make sure that every student has an opportunity to explore their career options further. What you find if you look at research is that students don't know enough about what's out there. So we're trying to expose them to what sort of careers exist and how they can follow the path to get there. The path to get there includes what they're doing currently in high school, but also about what they would need to do after high school. So there's a lot that goes into it. For some of the things that we're actually hosting this month, we do have currently 31 different career speakers coming in to visit the school throughout March. They're going to be going into some classrooms, but they're also going to be coming into the counseling office where students can meet with them to learn more about those careers. Our 9th grade counselors are going into the English classrooms for March, and they're going to be talking more about the different things that students can be doing to kind of figure out what it is that they like and they don't like. Nobody's asking them to pick a career in 9th grade, but we're asking them to start thinking about what are the kinds of things that you enjoy doing. If you are someone who needs to be outside, then you can't be sitting in a cubicle when you're 30 years old. So just kind of starting that conversation with them.
And for Mr. McInerney and Mrs. Demchak, do 9th grade students usually come in and talk about careers? I know earlier in the year we talked about what that transition was like, getting them to high school, and we're that was back in the beginning of the year, so we talked a lot about that. Do you get people, and I know you might not always get a chance to talk to people about what they're planning 4 years from now, but do 9th graders, do you get a sense that they're thinking about careers and career readiness at such a early spot in their high school career?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're thinking about careers. I think their parents might be thinking about what their plans are after high school a little bit more than the 9th graders are. And we do meet with 9th graders in 9th grade, early in the fall, and start talking to them about this. And one of the things that I like to let them know is that it's important to have a plan. And I think that's a good model for 9th graders, especially because they are coming up from the middle school and they're not exactly sure how to navigate things. So that could be something that they can transfer across different disciplines, not just what they're doing as far as their career readiness goes. What we try to teach them early on is, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, and how those do relate to your career. Because if you kind of select haphazardly without realizing how much time you spend at your job with your coworkers, you probably aren't going to last there very long. And if you are lucky enough to keep your job, you're not going to be happy. So we try to talk a little bit about, some values education as well. And then looking at the whole kind of array of how all those factors come into play and how they can kind of start to form you down a career path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just like to add, in my experience, I don't really feel like a lot of ninth graders come down seeking out career advice, but using tools such as Naviance and having students explore their interest, it's a place to start.
So what is, when you, in the month of March, when you go into the English classes, what kinds of things are you going to be working on or looking at? Is there like specific skills or specific things that you're going to be working with students on?
There is, as part of the statewide Career Readiness Initiative, all students need to have an academic and career portfolio. So we're going to be starting that with them. It's actually a continuation of what they did in middle school, but we're going to be just starting with their ninth grade portion, their high school portion, and that will follow them for the next 3.5 years that they're with us.
And if people have those were like the examples on that sheet are like the things on that neon green paper. I know the freshmen get one that's neon green. I'm not sure if it's different colors for every class, but we've had some flex blocks, and we will have another one at the end of March that kind of talk about those career readiness things. So you're going to go in and talk a little bit about how to get some more things on there and kind of make it part of like a portfolio-ish type thing.
Well, the academic and career portfolio is basically having them look at, okay, what am I thinking about doing for my future, and how can I incorporate the coursework and the elective offerings that I'm taking in high school to either, reinforce that, maybe confirm it, or on the other hand, give me a feel for like, whoa, this is not for me. I don't think I want to do a career that involves this subject, and then give them some alternatives.
So as they're working through that, what are some other things? So in addition to that, what are some other activities or things that are also, you talked about the career speakers list. Are there other things that are maybe visuals around the school that people will be able to see? So what are some other things that are planned for March as well?
Absolutely. There's going to be lots of stuff, hopefully, that the students notice. You'll see outside of counseling, there will be 2 bulletin boards that are specifically focusing on careers this month. You're also going to hopefully see around the building posters about employability skills, because students get jobs in high school. It's not just after high school that they will be working. So we really want them to know what it is that employers are looking for. There's also going to be signs on teachers' doors about how they got into education, why they got into education, different things like that. We also, last year, were fortunate enough to get career readiness t-shirts for all of the teachers. So every Wednesday, you should be seeing the teachers wearing their career readiness shirts to, again, highlight that this is important. This is not just something that you should think about once and move on from. This is something that is going to continue to build, and we're just highlighting it this month. But it's not going away. And
I was asked, or I think I volunteered more so than was asked to participate on the bulletin board. And it's just interesting, like, I think if you go by and see that bulletin board, there are going to be a lot of teachers that I don't think teaching was their first choice of profession. I know I wasn't. I was a journalism major, which is, I guess, why I enjoy doing the podcast so much here. But I think one of the things that's important for all the students to know is that the skills, I have the list of employability skills here, and maybe we'll just talk quickly about those. But the skills that you develop can apply to any career.
Right.
I think a lot of times when we think of I need to get a career when I'm 15 and I'm not going to be able to change. And I don't know what you guys think, but I think the way that the world is working is that I don't think a lot of the students that are in high school are going to have the same jobs for a long time at all. Right. And B, probably not going to have similar jobs all throughout their career. So is there I know it's really far in advance to look, but is there a way that we're kind of preparing students to think about the changing work world that we have? There's so much online work, there's so much piecemeal work, there's so much different things going on. Is there how are we kind of looking at stuff like that for students?
So as you may have noticed in the Google Classroom or even from that neon green paper, there are a lot of different activities that students can choose from. They are not being asked to complete all of those activities, but they are being asked to choose ones that are more meaningful to them. As part of those activities, we have things such as the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So there's an activity for that. Students can answer questions, do a little bit more research on that career. Even with what they're incorporating in English 11, which I know our freshmen aren't familiar with yet, but the paper that they're working on in there is also looking at current trends within the careers that they're looking into. Naviance is a really great tool for that too. So when students go in and they look up a career in Naviance, they're able to see what skills they need, but they're also able to see what they're doing on a daily basis, what those tasks look like. Because again, I don't know that people always realize what a job entails until they're in it. And so I think that's where we're really trying to push some of those activities with Naviance. We're encouraging them to do that research. We're really encouraging them to kind of see what it is that they're signing up for when they choose a career. But again, as Mrs. Demchak said, seeing if it aligns to what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's a trend now, instead of maybe looking more toward a specific job, a more global area. So maybe like the overarching umbrella, like for example, identifying your own personal interests. So like I'm a helper and I'm outgoing and I'm friendly. So I might be looking at some type of career that's helping related. Okay, so as I kind of dig deeper into that, those might be your types of human services, maybe education, maybe healthcare. So more globally as opposed to maybe more specifically, and definitely focusing on student strengths. So not necessarily like I want to be, an accountant, maybe more like I'm interested in numbers. I like the business field. So those kinds of things that aren't as narrow of a focus as maybe the approach was so many years ago. At least that was my experience when I was in high school. So
Agreed. And the reason that the state of Pennsylvania has started this initiative is because they're recognizing that students were coming out of high school without knowing some of these foundational employability skills. And also they were going on to college or even the workforce and not really knowing what it is that they are good at. What are their strengths? What are they like? So that's why they're asking us in the high school setting to make sure that we're helping kids to navigate this whole process.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like I think we've all been here long enough, or maybe close to long enough, when Emmaus High School used to have, as a graduation requirement, they had to do a career graduation project, which kind of fell by the wayside a little bit with some of the standardized testing. And it seems that they're kind of now coming back to that idea of like career readiness and making sure students are ready for different kinds of careers. So I just wanted to, real quick, before we kind of start tying up here, I have the list of top employability skills, and I just think it's kind of, just read through it quickly and then kind of get like maybe some feedback on like how do you students, like what kinds of ways are we kind of preparing students to like acquire these skills or work on them. But here are the skills, and these are going to be all over the building, so hopefully you get a chance to see them. They're like in a graphic that looks like I think it looks like a stack of books, but it's like ribbons. But so it's strong work ethic, dependable, positive attitude, self-motivated, team-oriented, organized, works well under pressure, effective communicator, flexible, and confident. Are there any of those that are easier to build or easier to kind of develop? Or like when you look at that, I always tell students like none of them on the list is like super awesome at math or like really smart in social studies, but they're all skills that like you can work on. So what are some of the strategies or tricks that maybe as you go through, and we're looking at all these different careers in the month of March, like how do you kind of impression upon ninth graders that these are like important things to kind of work on?
I don't think that students always realize that these are things that are being taught to them and almost expected of them on a daily basis. Strong work ethic. Are you completing your homework? Write that in there. Are you studying? Dependable and being on time. Are you getting to class on time? Are you coming in late? So whether or not students realize it, we're constantly trying to work with them on building these skills. So when they're saying, well, I don't like working as a team, I would rather work by myself. Yeah. There's reasons that we are encouraging them to do this, both in the classroom and even in our counseling sessions. We're encouraging that communication. If there's an issue between them and another student, we encourage a peer mediation that that we facilitate so that they're able to, again, work on those communication skills. If there's an issue between them and a teacher, we're working on them to say, okay, so let's practice how you're going to approach that teacher. Let's sit here and let's kind of role play so that you know how you're coming across. So again, I don't think students realize how much of this is already built into what we're asking them to do in a school day, or how valuable these things are. And we're not just asking them to do homework because we want to keep them busy. It's because they need to learn that work ethic. They need to learn those study skills. They need to learn the organization that's going to take them through the next 40 to 50 years when they are working.
And it's interesting that a lot of the kids that we talk to on the show that are successful, they always mention those skills as things that they're really working on. Those like, when do I get work done? How do I, how do I interact with my teachers? If I have issues in class, who do I go talk to? So hopefully through this month of March, like with the additional like emphasis on these skills and maybe seeing them around, that they kind of think a little bit more about them. Is there anything that anyone else wanted to add in about those employability skills, or just kind of?
I mean, just to piggyback, I think when I'm working with students, sometimes they will point blank ask you, I don't understand why these are the rules, or when it comes to changing classes, or why does this teacher expect this of me? But as Mrs. Grimm already said, these are all transferable skills into post-secondary options and working in the career field. So these are all things that employers expect, but maybe they don't realize that they're actually practicing for real life right now here in high school.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that's the disconnect, is like students don't think like, well, why am I learning this? Or like, what does this matter? Like, as a teacher in the classroom, we always get the question, like when they're doing slope, like, why does this matter? Yeah, when am I going to ever have to use this? And like legitimately, this is stuff that they can use every single day. That is not going to get a grade, and it's not going to get points because they complete it, but literally it's going to show up like when they go to a job interview or like out into the workforce or anything like that. So as we kind of wind down here, you heard one bell, you'll hear another bell in a couple seconds here. So if people want to find out more information about all the different stuff going on in March in terms of career readiness, we talked about where they can find it in the building outside of the counseling office, but where else can, if you're a parent at home, or maybe you're like somebody in the community that wants to see, or maybe you're hearing about this and you're like, hey, I want to go and speak because I got a cool job. Like, so where can people find more information about all the different things going on?
So information was emailed out to all of the students and all of the parents earlier last week.
Okay.
So they did receive that information. It's on the counseling website. It's also been on social media and will continue to be. So you just have to reach out to the counseling office if you want to collaborate with us, or if you want to learn more about it.
And then just a reminder, how if a student, so I'm looking at the career speakers list here, and I think I might even have an older copy, and there's literally, the one that I'm looking at has a speaker almost every day in March.
Yep.
So that's awesome that they're all filled up. So if I'm a student here at Emmaus and I want to go see, I don't know, maybe Laura Brual from PPL on third period during Monday, March 9th. Hopefully they're still coming. How do I go about doing that?
You sign up through Naviance. Okay. So again, if you log into Naviance, you go on the homepage, scroll all the way down to the bottom on the right-hand side, you're going to see where those visits are. If you just click on View More, it'll show all of them. Click on the one you're interested in, click Register, and you're good to go.
And as an added bonus, if you go to one of those career speaker things, you can also fill out one of the forms that can fulfill one of those requirements on the green sheet, correct?
Correct, yes. So in the Guidance Google Classroom, there is something that says college/career/military exit survey, because any three of those would pertain. So you can just answer questions about the career speaker that you saw, and then you can check that off your list.
Awesome. So any other last minute career advice, March career month ready advice, anything to be on the lookout for?
I think for me, the biggest thing I just want students to take away is that we are not just trying to give them extra work. We are not trying to give them busy work. This is really information that is very important and, again, is going to be useful down the road. I didn't know how to do a resume until after college, which would have been very helpful when I was looking for internships while I was in college, or even getting a job after college. So there are different things that we are offering for them to get practice on and for them to learn some of these skills. it is meaningful. Again, I can't stress enough that it's not busy work, but we're trying to help them to have the smoothest transition into post-secondary education as well as into the career field.
Well, thanks a lot for giving us all that information. So much good stuff. So be on the lookout here in the month of March. So we'll give you a couple days to get all that stuff together as we kind of look into March. So thanks a lot to Mr. McInerney, Mrs. Demchak, and Mrs. Grimm for her first time appearance here. Maybe it won't be her last, who knows. But thanks a lot for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.